Stage 1. Raw. You're 19. This wasn't an accident. You chose this, deliberately, repeatedly, even after it turned you away twice. The fitness test broke you the first time and humbled you the second. The third attempt, you scraped through on will alone. The letter from the LAPD lands on a Tuesday. It doesn't ask, it instructs. Monday morning, 5 a.m. Be there. The academy sits at the edge of the city, like something the neighborhood forgot about, a converted industrial building that smells like rubber in old concrete. 40 people walk in on day 1. By the end of week 2, 8 chairs are empty. No dismissals, no drama. They simply stopped showing up. You don't blame them. You think about it yourself once, at 4:47 in the morning, lying face down on a wet track with your arms giving out beneath you. You think about it, and then you get up anyway. Your lead instructor is Sergeant Gaza, medium height, unremarkable build, the kind of face you'd forget in a crowd. But he has a technique that gets under everyone's skin the same way. He appears behind you without warning and says absolutely nothing, just stands there, waiting, until whatever is shaking inside you goes still. You never get fully used to it. That might be the point. Midway through the program, a recruit named Whitfield pushes back during a morning drill. 3 words, barely above a mutter. Gaza's response is a single word: down. Whitfield drops. Every one of you drops with him. By the following Friday, Whitfield's locker is cleaned out. You keep your mouth shut for the next 6 weeks. You learn that silence is a skill, expensive to maintain, occasionally worth everything. 23 of you make it to graduation. When they pin the badge on your chest, the weight of it surprises you. It shouldn't, but it does. Stage 2. Street level. You're 21. Before SWAT considers you, you need 2 years of patrol. No exceptions, no shortcuts. You're assigned to East Compton, mostly nights, partnered with a 15-year veteran named Delocqua, who treats every shift like he has all the time in the world. He eats cold tamales out of a paper bag at 3 a.m. and never seems to be in a hurry about anything. You ask him about it once, the slowness, the deliberate pace when a call crackles through. He doesn't look up from the road. The guys who run toward everything, he says, either flame out or end up hurt. The job has a long memory. You have to pace yourself, or it will outlast you. One night, you respond to a disturbance call on the 3rd floor of a complex off Wilmington Avenue. You knock. The door opens the length of its chain. A woman looks at you through the gap. One eye is swollen completely shut. She tells you there's nothing wrong. You write the report the way it happened, every detail, the injury, her exact words, the time, the address. The report disappears into the system. 2 months later, you're back at the same door. You write another report. That's the year you understand the difference between law and justice. They are not the same destination. Sometimes the roads run parallel. Sometimes they diverge entirely, and you're left standing at the fork. When your 2nd year ends, you submit your SWAT application. Delocqua puts his name on your recommendation letter before you even bring it up. You've got the right instinct, he tells you. You don't unravel under pressure. In this line of work, that's the whole ballgame.
Stage 3. The selection. You're 23. They call it assessment week. 5 days. By the 3rd morning, you've invented your own name for it, and it isn't polite. Day 1 opens before the sun does, an obstacle course designed to find whatever's left of you after a sleepless night. That's followed by a shooting qualification, 80 rounds, targets that move, light that barely exists. From there, a psychological evaluation. Then 4 senior operators sit across a table from you and ask questions that have been engineered to have no correct answer. They aren't testing what you know, they're testing how you hold up when the ground disappears beneath the question. You clear a room in one scenario. Midway through, your partner collapses. The threat is still active. You have roughly 2 seconds. They don't ask what you did. They watch your eyes as you explain it afterward. Day 4 puts your team inside a gutted school building in Gardena. The objective: extract a civilian from a volatile situation with an armed subject. Within minutes, the scenario dismantles itself. The civilian panics, the lights die, your radio becomes useless static. Everything you rehearsed stops applying. The debrief is one-on-one. Senior Operator Hole sits across from you and tells you that you froze at the doorway. Not long, but long enough. He wants to know why. You don't manufacture an answer. You tell him you weren't certain your partner had clearance on the angle. He makes a note, keeps it to himself. 62 people entered the week. 11 come out the other side. You're among them, and you feel none of the triumph you expected. If anything, you feel the ground shifting, like this was only ever the beginning of something harder.
Stage 4. Probationary Operator. You're 24. You're in the room, but not yet trusted by it. 18 months of that particular in-between. LAPD Metropolitan Division, D Platoon. Nothing here resembles the version of SWAT that lives in people's imaginations. There are no slow-motion entries, no dramatic music. There is only repetition. The same breach sequence drilled until your nervous system owns it, until your hands move correctly before your mind is finished processing the command. You train in structures that have been emptied of everything except purpose: condemned apartment blocks, parking decks, freight containers bolted together into tight hallways and dead-end rooms. Close quarters instruction falls to Sergeant Reyes, ex-Army Ranger, a man whose patience is almost unsettling. He's past needing anyone's approval. That makes him an exceptional teacher. Your first real call-out is a barricade, a man with a rifle inside a motel room in Venice. You take the east corner and you hold it for 4 hours while a negotiator works the phone. The man walks out on his own. You never unsling your weapon. A few of the newer operators wear their disappointment openly. You don't share it. You remember something Hole said to you back during selection, that the call-out which ends without incident is the one you should want. 4 hours of holding a corner and everybody went home. You're beginning to understand what that means. Month 14, people stop checking on you quite as much. Month 18, probation ends. Reyes catches your eye across the briefing room and gives you a single nod. No ceremony. That nod is the ceremony. Stage 5. Full Operator. You're 26. 31 call-outs, 2 discharges of your weapon in the field. Television never got this right. The call-outs are real, but they are islands in an ocean of preparation. Between them, rappelling from rooftop edges, certifications in explosive breaching, submerged search protocols, operations in total darkness with equipment strapped to your face, medical training that covers everything from tourniquet application to emergency chest decompression. You absorb all of it until it stops feeling like learning and starts feeling like language. The call that stays with you comes out of Boyle Heights, active shooter, elementary school, 11:14 a.m. You're moving before the briefing wraps. Your team is through a side entrance in 85 seconds. The building has been evacuated. The shooter is locked in a supply closet adjacent to the gymnasium. You take the corridor. The negotiator spends 40 minutes on the line. Then the door opens and 2 hands appear first.
The debrief is technical, angles, sequencing, communication, what broke down and where. Nobody performs their feelings in that room. That's not the environment. On the ride back, your partner Torres looks out the window and says 2 words, "Good day." You nod. The conversation is complete. What you carry home isn't the call-out, it's the version your brain reconstructs at 2 a.m., running the same corridor with different timing, asking different questions. The job doesn't follow you through the door in the ways people expect. It follows you in the quiet.
Stage 6. Sniper. You're 29. The invitation comes without explanation. Not everyone receives it. You don't ask what it means that you did. 8 weeks, a facility buried in the Mojave, where the heat is a constant and the silence is total. What surprises you immediately is how much of the training is about doing absolutely nothing. Week 1 and 2 are dedicated entirely to stillness, holding a position for hours while the sun moves across the sky and your body screams for any adjustment at all. You learn to ignore it. A sniper who fidgets is not a sniper. Your spotter is Quan, 12 years on the team, economical with everything, including words. She communicates in fragments and expects you to complete the thought. You learn to do that quickly. In the field, half a sentence has to be enough. The legal threshold for a precision shot is not a suggestion. Imminent threat, no other option, confirmed target identification. You don't memorize this the way you memorize a policy. You carry it the way you carry something that could break you if mishandled. Every training scenario arrives at a moment of decision: fire or hold. Afterward, you stand in front of a room and walk through every second of your reasoning, while experienced people look for the places where it doesn't hold. It is the most demanding intellectual exercise of your career, and it happens after 8 hours on a rooftop in the desert. Your first field deployment as a sniper is a kidnapping in Reseda. 7 hours on a rooftop. The hostage is released. No shot taken. You disassemble your rifle, descend the ladder, and meet Quan at the bottom. She looks at you and says, "Good day." By now, you know exactly what those 2 words are worth. Stage 7. Team Leader. You're 33. 6 operators, your responsibility now. Not just their performance, but their judgment, their blind spots, the gaps between what they can do and what the job might ask of them at the worst possible moment. You run the drills, you track the scores, you study each person carefully, and you spend more time on their weaknesses than their strengths, because strengths rarely get people killed. One operator, Paxton, stands out. Technically gifted, his shooting is clean, his positioning instinctive, but in scenario work, he commits before the picture is complete. He moves on partial information and calls it confidence. You take him aside one afternoon after a drill. Being fast, you tell him, and being right are not the same thing. One of them matters more. He doesn't argue. Over the following months, you watch him deliberately slow his decision-making. It's one of the more satisfying things you witness in this role. Your first major operation as team leader unfolds downtown. Armed robbery, escalated to hostage situation. 3 suspects, 11 civilians, a commercial building with 17 potential entry points. Command allocates 20 minutes for your plan. You use 18. The operation lasts 4 minutes. Every hostage walks. 2 suspects surrender at gunpoint. The third runs and is caught 2 blocks away. In the after-action write-up, you list every operator by name, every correct call, every position held, every split-second judgment that worked. A superior asks why you didn't claim the breach decision as your own. You tell him the truth. You made 2 errors inside that building, and your team absorbed both of them without the situation ever knowing. That's the story, you say. Not mine.
Stage 8. The Voice. You're 37. Quantico. 14 days with the FBI's Crisis Negotiation Unit. You arrive expecting an advanced tactics course. What you find is something that looks more like a study of human nature at its most fractured. The instructor is a man named Brandt, 2 decades in crisis work, the last 11 spent on international kidnapping cases before coming home. On the first morning, he walks in, sets down his coffee, and asks a single question without greeting anyone. When someone is standing at the edge of everything, what is the one thing they want? The room offers answers: safety, escape, to be understood. Brandt dismisses each one. They want to matter, he says. Strip everything else away, and that's what's left. Once you understand that, you understand the conversation. You write that down. You don't stop carrying it. When you return, your role expands. You remain operational, but now you're also the person on the other end of the line, the voice that enters the room without entering it, working the space between desperation and decision. A Tuesday in February. A man named Gerald, Silver Lake apartment, door locked, firearm inside. His marriage ended. His income ended shortly after. He tells you there's nothing left worth stepping outside for. 3 hours and 40 minutes. You don't make promises you can't keep. You don't push. You don't negotiate in the traditional sense. You ask questions and you listen, not for the words, but for what lives in the silence around them. At 10 minutes to midnight, the door opens. Gerald sits down on the concrete step in the cold and folds forward into his hands. You sit down next to him. You don't say anything. There's nothing useful left to say. The calls that don't generate headlines are usually the ones that took the most out of you. You've made peace with that.
Stage 9. Command. You're 43. 41 operators, a staff, a budget, and the particular weight that comes with being the name at the bottom of every decision, even the ones you weren't in the room for. The work is administrative now, mostly. You haven't breached a door in years. Your days are reports, briefings, budget approvals, meetings with officials who want tactical capability on demand, and selective memory when things go sideways. A call-out in Hollywood fractures something. Not a catastrophe. The operator performs correctly. Protocol is followed to the letter. The shooting is clean by every legal and procedural measure. But a bystander captures 15 seconds on a phone, clips the context entirely, and posts it. Within an hour, it's everywhere. You stand in front of cameras that afternoon, and you speak plainly. No softening language, no institutional distance. A man was shot, you say. His family in this city deserve a complete and honest account of what happened. We intend to provide one. Your supervisor finds you afterward, tells you it was too unguarded. You tell him it was true. The full investigation exonerates the operator entirely. The unedited footage, once released, reframes the entire incident. But trust doesn't follow the facts on a clean timeline. 2 years of slow, grinding work to partially rebuild what 15 seconds undid. That period teaches you something you thought you already knew. The hardest part of leading this unit is not the operations. It's what you owe afterward, to the city, to the people who live in it, to the idea that power used without accountability corrodes everything it touches. You document everything. You stopped viewing transparency as a burden somewhere along the way. Now you see it as structural, the thing that keeps the institution from quietly becoming something else.
Stage 10. The Last Day. You're 51. Folding chair. High school gymnasium in Inglewood. A room full of people who represent collectively the better part of your adult life. Someone reads a list.
operations, resolutions, extractions, numbers that are both accurate and insufficient, because the list was built from records, and records don't capture certain things. They don't capture the phone calls that ran past midnight, the doors that opened because someone on the other side finally felt heard, the moments where the right outcome arrived not through force but through patience that nobody will ever document or commend. Sergeant Reyes drove 3 hours to be here. He retired 8 years ago and still made the drive. He finds you after the formal part ends, shakes your hand, holds it a moment longer than necessary, and nods once. That exchange contains more than anything said from the podium. You drive home alone. The city moves past the windows the way it always has. You think about Whitfield, who walked away in week 2. You've wondered across 30 years whether he found something that fit him better. You hope so. You think about Gerald on his front step in the February cold. You never followed up. You told yourself there were reasons for that. Tonight, you're less sure. You hoped the story continued past that doorway and went somewhere worth having. You think about Estrada, the operator you cleared after Hollywood. She came to your office 2 days after the shooting and asked you quietly whether she'd done the right thing. You told her she'd executed her training correctly and that her training was sound. That's the closest this job ever gets to absolution. You meant it when you said it. You still do. You think about Delocqua and his tamales and his unhurried philosophy of survival. You tried to pace yourself, not always successfully, but you tried. The house is quiet when you get in. You sit without turning the lights on. 32 years of learning the difference between the moment that calls for speed and the one that calls for stillness, between the word that opens a door and the silence that does it better, between action and the particular kind of courage it takes to wait. No one warned you that it would end like this, without noise, without ceremony, without anything to mark the transition except the dark and the quiet and the knowledge that the work was real even when nobody was watching. Especially then.